I just recently bought my first MacBook, a fantastic device with excellent build quality, superb battery life, and fantastic performance in apps like DaVinci Resolve. But there's always been one area that the Mac has fallen short: gaming. But recently, Apple might be making a push back into gaming, even bringing on developers like Hideo Kojima and Ubisoft to talk about their newest games during their press conferences. This got me really curious. Is gaming on the MacBook really that bad? Let's find out. When it comes to gaming on the Mac, I think that there are three main areas that we need to look at. First is what games are currently available to play. Second is how well do those games run on current hardware. And finally, what games are coming to the Mac? And what does the future look like? I'll be honest with you. The AAA games that are currently available on the Mac are kind of odd. For instance, the 2015 game Dying Light is available, but its sequel is not. The third game in the Metro series, Metro Exodus, is available, but none of the other games are. Counter-Strike Global Offensive is available, but Counter-Strike 2 isn't. Now, it's actually this last one that I think is the most concerning out of any of these, because Valve publicly said why they didn't make a Mac port. There are no players. Valve stated that all 32-bit players and Mac players combined totaled less than 1% of the player base. This creates a very worrisome situation for Apple. There are no players on the Mac. Then, there are no games on the Mac, resulting in no players on the Mac. However, I do think Apple is fully aware of this, and that's why many of the AAA games, if not all of the new AAA games coming to the Mac, are App Store exclusive ports. Currently on the App Store, you will find AAA games such as Assassin's Creed, Resident Evil 4, and Strand-type games like Death Stranding. Over on Steam, you will find the occasional AAA game, like I mentioned before, but for the most part, you are going to find indie games here, like Stardew Valley and Factorio. So now that we know what games are actually on the Mac, let's go ahead and try a few of them out. I think it's important to mention that I am running all of these games on an M2 Pro chip MacBook Pro with 16 gigabytes of RAM. I'm also running all of these games at 1900 by 1200 at high settings. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, a now 6-year-old game, runs at 60 frames per second. But surprisingly, it does drop to the low 40s in crowded areas. Metro Exodus actually runs fantastic, never falling below 60 frames per second. Resident Evil 4 is weird. It's the only game that I tested on this list from the App Store, and it's also the only game on this list which thought my PlayStation 5 controller was a keyboard. So because of that, it was unplayable with a controller. But when it did work, it would run at about 30 frames per second. This was definitely the most challenging game on the MacBook. Two things that I noticed hardware-wise on the Mac after playing quite a few games is that the screen on the MacBook is fantastic. The HDR and the brightness on this screen is incredible. I've never had a display like this before for gaming, and it's phenomenal. The second thing is that the MacBook gets very hot, and the fans do spin and make a lot of noise after you've been gaming for a while. I have not seen this start to impact the frames per second that I'm getting necessarily, but it has made it uncomfortable to have the laptop on my lap. The games that are currently available on the Mac run well enough for me to confidently say that the reason why there aren't more games on the Mac has nothing to do with the current hardware, or at least the current performance of the hardware. Is it on the same level as a high-end Windows computer with a dedicated GPU? No. But keep in mind that according to the most recent Steam hardware survey, most people aren't using these crazy high-end GPUs. In fact, the most common graphics card right now is a 3060, and right below that is a 1650. And I would certainly say that the MacBook is on par with those graphics cards. When it comes to games coming to the Mac, there are currently two notable games. The first is Assassin's Creed Shadow, the new Assassin's Creed game that's set in Japan, along with Death Stranding 2. Out of these two, I definitely think that Assassin's Creed Mirage is the most exciting, because I think that if it does well, it has the potential for more Ubisoft games to come to the Mac. When you put all this together, you're left with a very mixed bag. I truly believe that the Mac is fully capable of playing most modern games, but the games just aren't there. For instance, my top 3 most played games are Counter-Strike, Elden Ring, and Hunt Showdown. None of them are available on the Mac, and I'm willing to bet that your most played game isn't available on the Mac either. Until Apple figures out how to court developers into making Mac ports, I don't see any amount of fancy ray tracing hardware making any difference for gaming. Simply put, the Mac desperately needs more games. The piece that I really do think could change things is just how far Apple is willing to go with those App Store exclusive ports. But only time will tell. So should you buy a MacBook for gaming? No, absolutely not. But if you already have a MacBook, I encourage you to try gaming on it. Thank you for watching, and God bless.